Your coffee is cold." The man in seat 2A said it like an accusation, like I'd personally offended him by serving a beverage that wasn't precisely 180 degrees. "I apologize, sir. Let me get you a fresh cup immediately." And this time, he continued, not looking up from his tablet, perhaps he could manage to remember that I ordered it black. No sugar, no cream, just coffee. Is that too complicated? I forced my professional smile to stay in place, though my jaw ached from the effort. "Not at all, sir. Black coffee, coming right up." As I retreated to the galley, my colleague Jennifer caught my eye and mouthed, "What's his problem?" I shrugged, already reaching for a fresh cup. Just another difficult passenger. In 8 years of flying, I dealt with hundreds of them. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly know, was that the rude man in 2A wasn't just another passenger. He was Alexander Hunt, and he owned the entire airline I worked for. Let me back up, because this story actually starts 6 hours earlier in the crew briefing room at Chicago O'Hare. I was running on 4 hours of sleep, fueled by bad coffee and the stubborn determination that had gotten me through nearly a decade in this job. The Chicago to London route was one of our longest, and today's flight was fully booked, 326 passengers, all of them expecting perfect service. "Emma, you're on first class today," my supervisor Maria announced, checking her tablet. "Jennifer will be with you. Rest of the crew assignments are on the board." First class. That meant higher expectations, more demanding passengers, but also better tips in the quieter cabin. I could work with that. The pre-flight routine was exactly that, routine. Check emergency equipment, stock the galley, review special meal requests, smile at boarding passengers, welcome them aboard. I'd done it so many times I could practically do it in my sleep. Then, he walked on. Seat 2A. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair starting to silver at the temples. Expensive suit, probably custom tailored. The kind of passenger who flew first class regularly, who expected everything to be perfect because perfect was what he paid for. He barely acknowledged my greeting, just handed off his coat and settled into his seat with the air of someone who owned the place. Little did I know. The trouble started before we even pushed back from the gate. "Excuse me." His voice cut through the pre-departure service like a knife. "I ordered the salmon for my meal. I assume that's been noted?" I checked my tablet. "Yes, sir. Salmon is confirmed for seat 2A. And it will be served hot, not lukewarm, not cold." "Of course, sir. Our meals are served at proper temperature." "We'll see." He returned to his tablet, dismissing me. Jennifer caught my arm as I passed. "Who's the charmer in 2A?" she whispered. "No idea, but he's going to be a long flight." I was right. Once we were airborne and I began the beverage service, he had a complaint about everything. The water wasn't cold enough, the napkin was wrinkled, the peanuts were, and I'm not making this up, insufficiently salted. "Sir, I can get you pretzels if you prefer." "I don't want pretzels. I want properly salted peanuts. Is that really so difficult?" Other passengers were starting to notice. A woman across the aisle gave me a sympathetic look. The businessman in 2C rolled his eyes. "I'll see what I can do, sir." In the galley, Jennifer was incredulous. He complained about the peanuts? Who complains about peanuts? Someone who's determined to complain about everything, apparently. I grabbed the backup snack selection, searching for something that might satisfy him. "Want me to take over his section?" Jennifer offered. I shook my head. "No, it's fine. I've dealt with worse." And I had. There was the time a passenger had thrown a drink at me because we ran out of his preferred wine. The woman who'd screamed at me for 20 minutes because her blanket wasn't soft enough. Or the man who'd accused me of stealing his laptop when he'd left it in the seat pocket. Difficult passengers came with the territory. But this one was different. This one seemed almost methodical in his complaints. like he was deliberately testing every aspect of the service. When I brought his meal, he examined it like a health inspector. "The salmon is overcooked. Sir, it's prepared to airline standards, which are clearly insufficient. And the vegetables are cold." I took a breath. "I can heat them for you if you'd like." "Don't bother. I'll eat this, but I'll be filing a complaint about the quality." "I understand, sir. I apologize that it didn't meet your expectations." He finally looked directly at me, and I was struck by his eyes. Dark, intense, but not unkind, just assessing. "What's your name?" "Emma, sir. Emma Clark." "Well, Emma Clark, I hope for your sake that the rest of this flight improves." It was clearly a warning, but something in his tone made me pause. This wasn't just entitlement. This felt like something else. But I had 30 other first-class passengers to attend to, so I moved on, pushing my confusion aside. The flight continued. He continued, complaining about the entertainment system, about the cabin temperature, about the timing of the service. Each time I remained professional, calm, apologetic when appropriate, solution-focused when possible. And each time I noticed him watching me, not just when I was serving him, but when I was helping other passengers, when I assisted an elderly woman with her bag, when I spent extra time explaining the meal options to a nervous first-time flyer. About 6 hours into the flight, during a quiet moment, Jennifer pulled me aside. "Okay, I have a theory about Mr. Nightmare in 2A. Do I want to hear it? He's either a secret shopper for the airline, or he's just the worst human being on the planet." I laughed despite myself. Secret shopper? Really? Think about it. The methodical complaints, the way he's testing every single thing. My cousin works for a hotel chain, and they do this all the time. If he is a secret shopper, I'm probably failing spectacularly. Are you kidding? You've been amazing. Patient, professional, never losing your cool. If he reports anything negative, it says more about him than you. I wanted to believe that, but doubt crept in anyway. What if Jennifer was right? What if my job depended on satisfying this impossible passenger? The thought made my stomach clench. I loved this job. Loved the travel, the routine, the way every flight brought new faces and new stories. 8 years might not seem like much to some people, but I'd worked hard to get here, to build a career I was proud of. So, for the rest of the flight, I doubled down. I was even more attentive, even more careful. I anticipated his needs before he voiced them. I made sure his coffee was exactly the right temperature, his service impeccably timed. And slowly, something strange happened. His complaints decreased. Not disappeared. He still found things to critique. But there was something different in his tone. Less harsh. Almost thoughtful. When I brought his pre-landing beverage, he actually said, "Thank you." It was so unexpected I almost dropped the tray. "You're welcome, sir. Is there anything else I can get for you before we land?" "No." He paused, studying me again with those assessing eyes. "You've been very professional today, Miss Clark, under difficult circumstances." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Thank you, sir. That's my job." "Yes," he said quietly, "it is." We landed at Heathrow without incident. As passengers began gathering their belongings, preparing to deplane, I stationed myself near the exit with Jennifer, thanking everyone as they left. The man from 2A was one of the last to exit. He paused in front of me, and I braced myself for one final complaint. Instead, he pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to me. "Miss Clark, I'd like you to come to the airline's corporate office tomorrow at 2 p.m. The address is on the card." I stared at the card, then at him. Excuse me? 2 p.m. Don't be late." And then he was gone, disappearing into the jet bridge before I could ask any questions. Jennifer grabbed my arm. What was that? Did he just give you his number? No, it's... I looked the card properly for the first time. Alexander Hunt, Chief Executive Officer, Atlantic Airways. The cabin seemed to tilt, though we were firmly on the ground. Oh my God, I whispered. What? Emma, what is it? I showed her the card, watched her eyes go wide. The CEO? He's the CEO of the airline? Apparently. And he wants you at the office tomorrow? Jennifer's face cycled through confusion, concern, and finally settled on worry. Emma, do you think... Are you in trouble? That was the question that haunted me for the entire trip back to my hotel. Was I in trouble? Had I failed some test? Was this meeting just a formality before they fired me? I barely slept that night, going over every interaction, every complaint, every response. What had I done wrong? What could I have done better? By the time 2 p.m. rolled around the next day, I'd convinced myself I was about to lose my job. The Atlantic Airways corporate office was in central London, a sleek glass building that screamed money and power. I felt distinctly out of place in my simple dress and cardigan as I entered the marble lobby. Emma Clark to see Mr. Hunt, I told the receptionist, my voice steadier than I felt. Of course, Miss Clark. He's expecting you. 20th floor, his assistant will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride felt like it lasted an eternity. When the doors opened, a professional-looking woman in her 50s greeted me with a smile. Miss Clark, I'm Margaret, Mr. Hunt's executive assistant. Please follow me. She led me through a corridor of offices, past conference rooms with glass walls, finally stopping at a large door at the end of the hall. Mr. Hunt, Miss Clark is here. Send her in. Margaret opened the door, ushered me inside, then closed it quietly behind me, leaving me alone with Alexander Hunt. His office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, aviation photographs on the walls. He sat behind a desk that probably cost more than my car, but he stood as I entered. Miss Clark, thank you for coming. Sir, please, sit. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? The irony of him offering me coffee wasn't lost on either of us. Despite everything, I felt a ghost of a smile. No, thank you. He sat down, folded his hands on the desk, and studied me with that same intense gaze from the flight. I suppose you figured out by now why I was on your flight yesterday. You were testing the service, and I'm here because I failed. To my surprise, he shook his head. No, Miss Clark, you're here because you passed spectacularly. I blinked. What? I've been conducting random service evaluations across our fleet, booking flights under a different name, experiencing the service as a regular passenger would. Yesterday was my 3rd evaluation flight. And out of those 3 flights, your service was by far the most professional, patient, and genuinely caring I've experienced, despite my deliberately difficult behavior. You were deliberately difficult? I was impossible, he corrected. I complained about things that didn't warrant complaints. I was rude when you were nothing but courteous. I tested every aspect of your patience and professionalism, and you never broke, not once. I didn't know what to say. Relief warred with residual anger. He'd put me through that on purpose? I know you're probably upset, he said, reading my expression, and you have every right to be. But I needed to see how our staff performs under pressure, how they treat difficult passengers, whether they maintain their professionalism even when it's not easy. Most importantly, he added, I watched how you treated other passengers when you thought I wasn't looking. The elderly woman you helped, the nervous flyer you spent extra time with, the child you gave extra snacks to when his mother mentioned he had dietary restrictions. That's what really impressed me, Miss Clark. Your genuine care for people. The anger was fading.
replaced by confusion and a strange flutter of something else. Pride, maybe? Validation? Why are you telling me this? Because I want to offer you a position, head of customer service training. You'd be based here in London, responsible for developing and implementing training programs for all our flight attendants, teaching them to be exactly what you already are, exceptional. I need to think about it. Of course. He slid a folder across the desk. Here's the formal offer. Salary, benefits, job description. Take your time, but I hope you'll say yes, Miss Clark.
I took the folder, my hands shaking slightly. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you were complaining yesterday, were you ever genuinely annoyed, or was it all an act? A hint of a smile crossed his face. There was one moment of genuine frustration. What? When I realized how much attraction I found you, despite trying to maintain professional distance for the evaluation. The words hung in the air between us. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. That was, unexpected honesty, I managed. I have a policy of honesty, Miss Clark. Always, even when it's uncomfortable. He stood, extending his hand. Think about the offer. Take as long as you need. And again, thank you for yesterday, for being exactly what this airline should be. I shook his hand, professional and brief, then fled his office before I could do something stupid like blush harder or say something inappropriate. In the elevator, I opened the folder. The salary made my eyes water. It was nearly double what I currently made. But it was the handwritten note paperclipped to the offer letter that really got me. I'm sorry for being impossible. You handled it with more grace than I deserved. A.H. I spent 3 days thinking about it, talking to friends, making lists of pros and cons, lying awake at night imagining what this new life could look like. The deciding factor wasn't the money, though that was certainly appealing. It was the memory of Alexander Hunt's words, teaching them to be exactly what you already are. The chance to help others, to improve the experience for thousands of passengers and hundreds of flight attendants, to make a real difference. How could I say no to that? On day 4, I called the number on his card. Mr. Hunt's office? This is Emma Clark. I'd like to speak with Mr. Hunt if he's available. One moment, Miss Clark. Emma. His voice came through, warm and somehow more personal than it had been in the office. Have you made a decision? I have. I'd like to accept your offer. A pause, then, I'm very glad to hear that. When can you start? I need to give notice at my current base. 2 weeks? Perfect. I'll have Margaret send over all the onboarding information. And Emma? Yes? Welcome to the team. I think you're going to change everything. He was right, though not in the way either of us expected. The first few weeks in my new role were overwhelming. There was so much to learn. Corporate procedures, training methodologies, budget management. I went from the familiar routine of flights to the entirely new world of meetings, presentations, strategic planning. Alexander, I'd been told to call him Alexander, not Mr. Hunt, though it took me weeks to get comfortable with it, was surprisingly hands-on. He attended my training sessions, offered feedback, connected me with resources I needed. He was nothing like the man from the flight. Patient, encouraging, genuinely interested in improving the airline service culture. You're doing exceptionally well, he told me after I'd led my first full training session for a group of new hires. I knew you would, but it's still impressive to see. Thank you. Though I have to admit, I was terrified the entire time. You didn't show it. That's a valuable skill, maintaining composure even when you're nervous. We were in the training room, alone now that the session had ended. Late afternoon light slanted through the windows, and I was acutely aware of how close he was standing. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did you really hire me? Was it just my service on the flight? Alexander was quiet for a moment, considering. Honestly, it was a combination of things. Your professionalism, yes, but also
You were genuine. In an industry where people often go through the motions, you clearly still cared about the job, about the passengers. That kind of passion is rare. And that's all it was? Professional assessment? Are you asking me if I had ulterior motives, Emma? The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. I suppose I am. Then I'll give you an honest answer. When I first walked onto that flight, it was purely professional. But somewhere between the cold coffee and the undersalted peanuts, I started noticing things that had nothing to do with service quality. Like what? Like the way you smile at passengers. Genuine and warm. The way you never lost your patience, even when I was being insufferable. The way you treated every person with equal respect and care, regardless of their seat number or how they treated you. He paused, then added quietly, and yes, the fact that you're beautiful. Though I tried very hard not to let that influence my professional judgment. My breath caught. Alexander, I'm not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I'm saying this because you asked for honesty, and I believe in giving it. But I want to be very clear. I hired you because you're the best person for this job. Everything else, that's just the complication I'm trying to manage. What if I don't want you to manage it? The words were out before I could stop them. His eyes darkened. Emma, I'm your boss. There are professional boundaries we need to maintain. I know, and I respect that, but you're also the most interesting man I've met in years, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I've thought about that moment in your office when you told me you found me attractive. I should never have said that. But you did because you believe in honesty, remember? We stood there, tension crackling between us like electricity, both of us aware we were approaching a line we probably shouldn't cross. Finally, Alexander stepped back. I need to think about this. We both do. This isn't something to rush into. I understand. But Emma, I'm glad you said something, even if it's complicated. After he left, I sank into a chair, my heart racing. What was I doing? This was my boss, the CEO of the company. Getting involved with him was probably the most professionally risky thing I could do. But I couldn't deny what I felt. And apparently, neither could he.
The next few weeks were a study in professional torture. We saw each other daily. Meetings, training sessions, strategic planning discussions. Every interaction was correct, appropriate, but charged with unspoken tension. I caught him watching me sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking, and I'm sure he caught me doing the same. Finally, after a month of this careful dance, he invited me to dinner. Business dinner, he clarified quickly, to discuss the quarterly training metrics, but also perhaps to talk about things that aren't business. I'd like that. The restaurant he chose was elegant but not ostentatious, a quiet Italian place tucked away from the business district. We started with the metrics, discussing training completion rates and feedback scores, but gradually, inevitably, the conversation shifted. Tell me something about yourself that isn't in your employee file, Alexander said over wine and pasta. Like what? Anything. Something that makes you who you are. I thought about it. I wanted to be a pilot originally, when I was young, but my family couldn't afford flight school, so I became a flight attendant instead. And I found I loved it. The service aspect, the connection with people. It wasn't what I planned, but it was what I needed. Do you still think about flying? Piloting, I mean? Sometimes, but I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be now. Teaching, helping others be better at something I love. I understand that feeling. I inherited this airline from my father, but I've spent 15 years making it my own, building something that reflects my values, not just his legacy. That must be hard, living up to a legacy while trying to create your own. It is. You're one of the few people who hasn't immediately assumed I had everything handed to me. Did you? He smiled, appreciating the directness. The company, yes, but earning the respect of the people who work for it, that I had to do myself. Some days I'm still working on it.
I think you've earned it. From what I've seen, people respect you. They might also be a little terrified of you, but they respect you. Terrified? He looked genuinely surprised. Alexander, you're the CEO. You have power over their careers, their livelihoods. Of course they're intimidated. Are you intimidated by me? I was, on the flight, definitely. In your office that first day. But now, I met his eyes. Now I see past the position to the person, and no, I'm not intimidated anymore. Something shifted in his expression. Emma, I need to tell you something. Okay? I haven't stopped thinking about you since that flight. I told myself it was just professional admiration, that I was impressed by your work. But it's more than that. Has been from the start, if I'm honest. Alexander? Wait, let me finish. I know this is complicated. I know there are power dynamics and professional concerns. If you want to keep things strictly professional, I'll respect that completely. But I also believe in being honest about what I want. And I want to know you better. Outside of work. As more than colleagues. My heart hammered against my ribs. I want that too. You're sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. And I need you to be certain. I'm certain. I've been certain since that moment in the training room when you told me I was beautiful. He reached across the table, taking my hand. The touch sent electricity through me. Then let's be very clear about something. At work, I'm your boss. Professional boundaries remain. But outside of work, I'd very much like to be the man trying to convince you to give him a chance. You already have a chance. That dinner became a routine. Once a week, sometimes twice, we'd meet at quiet restaurants, slowly learning each other. His childhood, growing up with airline royalty parents, my small town upbringing, his love of old movies, my secret passion for painting. At work, we maintained perfect professionalism. No one suspected there was anything between us beyond the normal boss-employee relationship. But outside of work, we built something real. 3 months after I'd accepted the job, Alexander invited me to his house for the first time. I want to cook for you, he said, assuming you trust my kitchen skills. Should I be worried? Probably, but I promise the attempt will be sincere. His house, calling it a house, felt insufficient. It was more like a mansion, was in the countryside outside London. Modern, elegant, with enormous windows overlooking gardens and trees. It's beautiful, I breathed as we walked through. It's lonely, he corrected. I bought it thinking I'd entertain, host gatherings, but mostly I work late and come home to silence. In the kitchen, I watched him cook with surprising competence. Nothing fancy, pasta, salad, garlic bread, but made with care and attention. You're better at this than you claimed, I noted, sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine. I like cooking. It's meditative. Lets me turn off the CEO brain for a while. What's that like? Being CEO? Is it what you wanted? He considered while stirring sauce. Honestly, I don't know if I ever really had a choice. My father groomed me for it from childhood, but I've grown into it, found ways to make it mine. Do you resent him for not giving you a choice? Sometimes, but he's gone now, 5 years this month, and I've had time to appreciate that he gave me something meaningful to build on, even if the way he did it was flawed. I'm sorry about your father. Thank you. He would have liked you, I think. He valued competence and dedication. You have both in spades. We ate dinner on his patio, under stars just beginning to emerge. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd known each other far longer than a few months. Emma, he said as we were cleaning up, I want you to know something. What? I don't do this. Date employees, blur professional lines. I've always been very careful to keep my personal and professional lives completely separate. But with you, I can't seem to help myself. You've gotten past every defense I have. I set down the plate I'd been drying. Is that a bad thing? No. It's terrifying, but not bad. I crossed to where he stood by the sink, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Alexander, I need to tell you something too. I'm listening. I've been in relationships where I felt small, where I had to diminish myself to fit someone else's idea of who I should be. With you, I feel like I can be exactly who I am. More than that, you see things in me I didn't see in myself. That job offer, the training position, you gave me a chance to be more than I thought I could be. You were always capable of being more. I just gave you the opportunity. Maybe, but it means something that you saw it when I didn't. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was tender, careful. Can I kiss you? He asked, quietly. I've been waiting for you to ask. When his lips met mine, it felt like everything clicked into place. Like this was exactly where I was supposed to be, exactly who I was supposed to be with. The kiss deepened, his hands cradling my face, my arms wrapping around his neck. It was perfect and right and absolutely terrifying in its intensity.
When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I should probably tell you, he murmured, that I'm already falling in love with you. Have been for a while now. That's convenient, because I'm already there. We spent the rest of the night talking, kissing, planning, agreeing how we'd handle this at work, deciding when to eventually tell HR, making promises about honesty and communication. We'll have to be careful, Alexander said as he drove me home late that night. Not because I'm ashamed. I want to shout from the rooftops that you're mine, but because I don't want anyone at the company to think you've gotten ahead because of our relationship. I understand, and I agree. What we have is ours. We don't need to broadcast it. Eventually, though, I'm going to want the world to know. Eventually, I agreed. So will I. The months that followed were some of the happiest of my life. At work, I thrived in my role, developing training programs that genuinely improved service standards across the fleet. Alexander supported my initiatives, gave me resources and authority, but never in a way that showed favoritism. Outside of work, we built a relationship based on equal partnership. He respected my opinions, my boundaries, my independence. I challenged him when he needed it, supported him when he struggled with the weight of leadership. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of stress, times when keeping our relationship private felt like a burden, nights when he had to cancel plans for emergency board meetings, days when I worried that someone would find out and assume the worst about how I'd gotten my position. But it was worth it. Every moment was worth it. 6 months after that first dinner, Alexander invited me back to his house. I want to show you something, he said mysteriously. In his office, a room I'd only been in a few times, he opened a drawer and pulled out a leather-bound book. What's this? Open it. Inside were flight logs, dozens of them, his undercover evaluation flights, documented meticulously. You keep records of all of them? Everyone. Look at the entry for your flight. I flipped to the date I'd served him cold coffee and undersalted peanuts. The notes were detailed, every interaction documented, every observation recorded. At the bottom, in his handwriting, exceptional service, recommend for advancement. Also, her smile could light up the darkest day. Professional observation only. Mostly. I laughed through tears I didn't expect. You wrote that during the flight? After, when I was trying to convince myself my interest was purely professional. And now? He took the book from my hands, set it aside, and pulled a small box from his pocket. Now, he said, opening it to reveal a simple but stunning diamond ring. I'd like to stop pretending this is just professional interest. Emma Clark, will you marry me? I stared at the ring, at his face, at the impossible beauty of this moment. You're sure? This isn't too fast. I've never been more sure of anything. I knew on that flight, even as I was complaining about coffee temperature, I knew you were someone special,
someone I wanted in my life permanently. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a passion that made my knees weak. "We can tell people now," he said, when we finally broke apart. "No more hiding. I want everyone to know you're mine. Our employees are going to think I seduced you for job advancement. Then we'll show them how wrong they are, how professional you've remained, how you've earned every bit of your success through competence and dedication. Some people will never believe that. Then those people don't matter. The ones who count, the ones who've worked with you, seen your capabilities, they'll understand." He was right. When we made the announcement the following week, most people were surprised but supportive. There were a few whispers, a few knowing looks, but overwhelmingly, our colleagues were happy for us. And those who questioned whether I'd earned my position, they disappeared quickly once they saw how I continued to excel, to grow, to lead. We were married quietly 6 months later in a small ceremony with close friends and family. No corporate spectacle, no airline employees, just the people who mattered most, celebrating a love story that started with terrible coffee service and impossible complaints. At the reception, Alexander gave a toast that made me cry. Emma walked onto my aircraft as a flight attendant doing her job exceptionally well. She walked into my life and changed everything I thought I knew about love, partnership, and what it means to find someone who sees you completely. She's made me a better CEO, a better person, a better man. And all I had to do was be absolutely insufferable for 7 hours on a flight from Chicago to London. Everyone laughed, and I saw Jennifer in the crowd grinning at me with obvious delight. "To Emma," Alexander concluded, raising his glass. "The woman who served me cold coffee and won my heart." "To Emma," everyone echoed. Later, as we danced, I whispered in his ear, "You know, you never did apologize properly for being so difficult on that flight." He pulled back to look at me, eyes twinkling. "No? How should I make it up to you?" "Well, we have our whole lives. I'm sure you'll think of something." "I already have several ideas." "I bet you do." We swayed together, and I thought about the journey that had brought us here, from cold coffee and salt complaints to this moment dancing in the arms of the man who'd seen something in me I didn't see in myself. "Emma," Alexander said softly. "Hmm? Thank you." "For what?" "For being patient with me when I was testing you. For seeing past the difficult passenger to the person underneath. For taking a chance on the job. For taking a chance on us. You didn't give me much choice. You bought the airline I worked for." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Fair point, though in my defense, I bought it before I met you." Details. Important details. We danced until the music ended, until the guests went home, until it was just us in the quiet aftermath of celebration. And I realized something that night, something I should have known from the beginning. Sometimes the most difficult people in our lives become the most important ones. Sometimes complaints about cold coffee lead to love stories. Sometimes the worst flight of your career turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. Alexander Hunt had walked on my aircraft as the most impossible passenger I'd ever served. He'd walked into my life and become my everything. And it all started because I'd served him coffee that was too cold.